Zoom recording. So I'll just fill everybody else in around that other part before. But what I was trying to say was we wanted to make sure everybody has equal opportunity to be successful with the exam. And because this is a new platform and everybody's still getting used to the idea of doing the exam on a platform, we have made the decision to allow the hard copy documentation provided. So we have a question coming in. Will there be an option to view the electronic copy in full PDF form? That's a great question, Melissa. And I believe our exam provider is working on allowing for those PDF materials to be accessible within the exam platform itself. But that will be the only way that you will be able to access them through your computer is through the exam platform. You won't be able to have another window open with Adobe having those PDFs available. So another question is, are we able to tab the Act and regulations for easy reference? That is a good question and a decision that I have not made yet. So as soon as I have had a few more hours or days to kind of contemplate what this means, I'll provide everybody with an email with more detailed instructions about the type of material that can be printed, whether it has to be exactly what I email you and you print it out and that's what you have beside you, or if you're allowed to tab those. So we'll definitely provide you with more of that information as it becomes available. Some other questions are coming in. So I think those are more related to what I'm getting into the second half of the presentation. So I'm going to hold off on those questions until we get through the content and what Megan and Pascal are here to help us with. And then we'll come back to these more functionality type questions. But I just wanted to let you know that the hard copy of the Act and the regulations will be permitted, and they will also be available within the exam platform itself. An English or French dictionary in hard copy will also be allowed. It will not be provided to you. So if you wanted to use an English or a French dictionary, then you have to bring your own hard copy to your exam area, wherever you're going to be doing your exam in your office, your home. That will be how you will be allowed to access a dictionary. You will not be able to use a dictionary online. The exam platform software locks your computer down, so you cannot access any external sites. The other exam preparation materials on our website are previous exams, and I'm sure everybody has had a chance to look at those that have been posted. Okay, so that kind of covers the first. I guess everybody's just very intrigued about this this online exam platform, but this kind of finishes off the types of materials that I wanted to share with you in terms of what's permitted, what's not permitted, and the types of questions and the content of the exam. Now I'll open up the floor for questions for Megan and Pascal, and I'll give you some examples of the questions that we've received most recently. So one of the questions, let me just minimize that, would be, are full citations required when citing a case, or is it sufficient to do abbreviated versions? For example, will I need to write Nova Farm Limited versus Bayer Inc., comma 1999 Canley or just Nova Farm versus Bayer? Is that sufficient? And so what I've heard from the exam board for this year, because this question was asked previously, was that the Nova Farm versus Bayer citation would be sufficient and the full citation would not be required. Another question that we got would be, this question was, what answer will the examining board accept as correct? The fees as currently cited in the schedule to the trademark regulations, both online and the 2021 published edition, or the fees with the Service Fees Act of 2%? Or both, or if the fact pattern could require an act to be done after January 1st, 2022, the new fee amounts coming into force on January 1st, 2022. This is more of a question of how do you calculate the charges? And the response was, the key is that the candidates know to refer to the tariff to provide a cost estimate to their client. This is why the language and procedures regarding potential deficiency in payment are important. So that being said, those were just some of the example questions that we have had come in. So I'm just going to monitor the Q&A here and see if there's any questions related to content that Pascal and Megan can help us with. Okay. Okay, so Sarah's asking, since the fee schedule in the regulations does not include the updated fee amounts payable as set out on the CPO website, if there are any questions regarding the amount of fees payable, will we be allowed to use a calculator to calculate those fees, or will we need to do quick math? Megan, Pascal, do you guys have any insight into this?
I think that probably it's going to be the same answer as as you just provided from the current board. I mean, certainly it was fairly simple when Pascal and I were on the board. The fees hadn't changed in years, so you know, they hadn't gone up by those strange amounts. So I would think that the same answer applies to that question as to the last question, that as long as you say that you're looking in the fee schedule for the amount, that would probably suffice, unless they ask for a specific amount. But unless you're going to allow a calculator to be there, I don't think that, you know, major calculations are going to be required.
Pascal?
If I may add to that, yes, if I recall, we accepted as correct answers pay the fee and the reference to the actual regs, you know, setting the fee. So that's good. And if I may also add a compliment to you, your answer to the first question regarding case citation. What we also accepted is if you, for instance, you forgot the name of the parties, but you remember that the trademark that was at issue, that could also be a correct answer. For example, you say it's the penguin case or the Barbie case. You know, that as long as, you know, the correctors know that you're pointing at the right decision, then that's good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You know, the correct Supreme Court, you know.
But in that regard, just be careful that you're, you know, if there's a Molson case that's used for a particular proposition, you're going to have to be a little bit more specific, because, you know, the beer wars, there were tons of Molson cases. So, you know, you'll have to put the other side of that as well, but definitely not the citation, the specific citation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And also, Sarah, just to answer your question, I asked the exam board if there were any calculators necessary, because that was part of the exam development process, and they said no. So you should not have to be calculating anything. Okay, so Mika is asking, regarding citing cases, would an even shorter form be acceptable? Okay, so Pascal just kind of went through that. For example, Mattel SCC 2006 acceptable, or would you have to say Mattel Inc. V389, blah, 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 blah. I think that the first part was okay, just the Mattel case.
Even without the 2006, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to get that granular, because you know, that would require a fair bit of memorization. So I don't think that that's necessarily the intent of what we're trying to examine everybody on, and how well you can memorize those types of things. Any other questions for, oh, we have Sarah. I have a technical question regarding the platform. Okay, so yes, I will answer that question after Sarah. Any other questions, content related, or question, how to answer a question, those types of questions for Pascal or Megan, because they will be leaving the webinar when this section of the webinar is done. So if you do have any questions for them, now is the time to ask. Oh, we have Denise is asking, do we need to specify the PN name, or just say there is a PN on said topic?
The latter. Yeah, just say there is a practice notice on the subject.
There you go. Just say there's a practice notice on that topic. And Sarah's asking, will an abbreviation of citing sections from the Trademark Act to TMA or trademark regulations to TMR throughout the exam be accepted, or will we need some sort of legend at the beginning for all abbreviations that we use?
So I would go with the legend.
Okay.
Okay, I would say it's not necessary. I've seen a lot of people do it, but it's clear if it's TMR. But then again, you know, there's no clear rule on that. So if you want to put the legend, take 30 seconds or 25 seconds to put it. But if it's TMA, TMR, it's not a problem. And And if your R looks like an A, but that's not an issue with the with typing. So, but then again, you may press the wrong. What happens if you do TMW because you press the wrong key? Then sorry, you probably get that one wrong. Yeah, the correctors won't know if you're reciting the regs or the rules. Or sometimes people put ACT or regs. That's good, but err on the safe side and do what Megan suggests.
Good point.
Another point with regards to specificity when you're dealing with the Trademarks Act or provisions of the Trademarks Act or the trademarks regulations, be sure you put the relevant subsection. So, I mean, if you just put section 12 when there's a specific registrability issue, that's not going to get the point for you. So be specific. You have the act right there. You have the regs right there. So really, make a point of putting in all of the correct section numbers that you need.
Good advice for sure. So another question from Genevieve is there a list of decisions that you would recommend to know for the exam?
Well, I would say everything that's in the trademarks examination manual and everything the Supreme Court ever rendered, on trademarks, that would be a good start.
Everything.
Well, the 20 or so, decisions from the Supreme Court. I mean, they're must knows. I mean, that's part of basic law. So,
but really, I think that any of those important Supreme Court decisions that really would impact the exam would already be in the manual. So I do think that the manual is your first and best your first and best place to look, because that's where I know that for the past several years we've been taking our cases from when we do those match the case to the proposition. That's where they've been pulled from. So, but if there has been a major decision, which I can't really think of a really groundbreaking decision in the last year, but that kind of thing, keep an eye on that where it may not have been added yet to the examination manual. Think about that, but as I say, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything really major in the last year. So,
okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so Sabrina's asking, will there be questions regarding the new college and the College of Patent Agents and Trademark Agents Act? No, I do not believe that any specific questions are related to that act. However, there are ethics questions that could be related to the Code of Professional Conduct. So I would definitely recommend reviewing the Code of Professional Conduct as it relates to ethical type of questions, because the college just came into force and we haven't really done any work on redesigning the type of questions that are being asked in the exam. Is very similar to what has been previously done in terms of that. We wouldn't say, what are the 3 requirements of registration to become a trademark agent in Canada? That's not the type of question that we'll ask on the exam, but we will expect you to know, rules of professional conduct, for example. So that's what I would say would be your focus with respect to the new college. Mika's asking, is there an already completed list of what the TMO thinks is the key case law behind the TMOB decisions?
So I think that there is an accepted list of cases that the TMOB has that you don't have to submit for the purposes of a hearing, etc. You might want to take a quick look through there because obviously they consider those important decisions. But as I say, over the past few years, we certainly haven't, or on paper A, although opposition is paper B, so Pascal could maybe speak to that better, but I have not, and my group has not drawn from that list specifically. But Pascal, can you address that as well?
Yes, I can, but not better than you. So I'll, yeah, so just make sure you go through the exam manual so many times. Make a list of the cases that are cited in there. Make a table. What are the principles? And to try to memorize that basic table. Just probably doing the table would be by itself a very good study tool.
Right, because even though that's the examination manual, I mean, they are citing TMOB cases and federal court cases and Supreme Court cases. So they have to do with oppositions as well. So it's not going to be a different set of cases that you're dealing with, really.
Great, thank you. I do see some other platform related questions coming through, so I'm just going to remind everybody to hold on to those because we're going to go through a whole bunch of information related to the exam platform and the functionality of the exam. And that's when I'll ask you to share those questions with me. So I'm just going to skip over the ones related to the platform. Amanda's asking, when responding and citing a section of the Act, do we have to say section and paragraph, or is the section sufficient?
So I think I mentioned before that you want to be as specific as possible. So if it's section 12(1)(b), then you want all of those, you want the numbers and the letter there, you want all of it. So do be specific. You don't have to say section 12, subsection 1, paragraph A, but you have to do the 12(1)(a) or 12(1)(b) or whatever it is. Yeah. If the whole provision applies, then sure, cite the whole provision. Like if there are, I can't think of a specific example, but the question should lead you to the level of specificity you need, and just be as specific as the question requires.
Yeah, and I would say, let's say the answer is the correct answer is paragraph 12(1)(a), and you write section 12(1)(a), that'll be okay.
Definitely. Sabrina's asking, if we have a book that contains the Act and the regulations, would that be permissible, or should we print out a clean copy? So I'm going to probably say that you'll be required to print out a clean copy, but I will make that decision in the next day or so and let everybody know via email. Another question, are we going to be dealing with the old Act, or are we only going to be using the new Act with this exam? So I'm unfamiliar with the Trademark Act. Has there been a recent change?
So in 2019, there were huge changes. And so there is some residual, every once in a while you might hit old Act stuff, but it should all be in the transitional provisions of the new Act. So I would say that the new Act is likely sufficient because, it'll tell you in the new Act what the transitional provisions are. And I don't even know that the new board, I have no idea what they've done, but I can't see them, testing on old material now, because the transitional provisions are almost to the point of being obsolete, or will be very soon anyway. So
that makes sense.
And again, if I had been working on the exam drafting this year, I would have put in a trick question about a very lengthy opposition proceeding about a trademark that was published prior to June 19, 2019. So just make sure, just check the dates. I mean, that's a very good trick. Check all the dates in a question. Dates are there for a reason usually, because if it's an opposition question, then you have, the date, the publishing, the publication date, the filing date, the date of the opposition. Those are all relevant for different motives of opposition. So dates are very important. So check the dates and ask yourself, why is that date there? That's a general comment.
But I can't imagine them asking you, specific grounds of opposition that from the old Act. They may just say which applies or something like that. Although, I don't know that for certain. Maybe they're being very tricky this year, but
I don't believe they would be anything tricky.
Pascal's gone, so you're okay. No.
Okay, when answering long answer, do we have to be formal? Example, the examiner objected to blah, blah, blah on the basis that blah, 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 with the formal closing stating the TM application is in good standing, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I have two comments on that. Usually lengthy questions have an extra mark for, clarity. And also, this is an exam about being a professional. So I would say it's a good habit to do so. And also, if you're not clear onto what you're meaning, what you're trying to say, and the corrector can't understand, you won't get a mark. And from what I gather, compared to the past when people used to write their exams manually, time was more of an issue. Now that people are typing, seems to have a little more time to write, more complete sentence, because you could copy paste some stuff probably. And so take the time. I would say the clearer your answer is, the more formal it is, the more chances it won't be misunderstood.
Awesome, thank you. So Mika is asking, do we need to cite the exact rule or sub-rule from the rules of professional conduct, or just know the substance? You would not be required to quote or cite exact rules or sub-rules of the code of conduct. It would be more or less, is this an ethical situation? How would you proceed in an ethical way, type of thing? But we would not require that level of detail on this exam. Genevieve is asking, is there going to be specific questions on the Madrid Protocol or more general questions?
I think I would be ready to respond to fairly specific questions with respect to how the Madrid Protocol affects Canadian filings, Canadian international filings. So, I mean, I don't think again that you'll be required to cite specific provisions of the Madrid Protocol, but you should be fairly familiar with international applications filing through CPO, et cetera. So yeah, as it impacts Canadian trademark law, I would be familiar to that extent, yes.
Okay. Should we presume for the exam that we are just trademark agents and not lawyers? For example, if the questions ask about something you are permitted to do as a lawyer versus an agent, we should act as if we are not lawyers? Question mark.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes, unless it's specified in the question. It's not, because it's not an exam, it's not a law exam, it's a trademark agent exam. So yeah, for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say it's a litigation type question. So be careful how far you can answer and what you can recommend in terms of recourses. As a trademark agent, for example, if you want it, if it's to formal litigation, and the proper answer would be referred to a lawyer to action.
Yeah, so you're wanting to be able to identify the issues. I mean, you have to understand that there is infringement involved, or maybe an invalidation proceeding before the court is necessary. So you need to be able to identify legal issues like that, but you should be once you've identified the issues and answered, of course, the specific question, you should also say, if the question requires it, that this should be something that you refer to a lawyer. But do know how to identify the issues, yes.
Thank you. So Gabriel was asking, should we have two versions of the Act on hand, pre and post? And I'm going to say no, you will only have access to the most recent version of the Act on hand. Another question, how in depth do we need to know the provisions with respect to importation and exportation / detained goods?
I would say there's like a small chance that there's a small question about that. So I would, it's possible. I think I've put it in one of the questions I've drafted in the past, so it's not impossible, but we can't, having not drafted the exam, have no idea what they put in. It's fair game.
Yeah, I mean, I would know about the request for assistance as an option for dealing with counterfeit goods at the border, but I don't think that's a major focus of the exam. But certainly be familiar with it, not overly familiar with it.
It shouldn't be the focus of all of your studying, but you should be familiar with it. Okay, so Alexander's asking, if we are a lawyer and do TM litigation, and if we forget to add the corollary refer to a lawyer, would we be docked marks?
I think in a case like that, I mean, it depends on the question. Like if the question, I think you'll understand from the question whether it's asking you, is this something I should be doing as a trademark agent or not? So don't forget that you are taking the trademark agent exam when you're writing it. So if the question, speaks to what an agent should and should not be handling, then look at it from that perspective and not from a lawyer's perspective.
Yeah, And in addition to that, the correctors don't know if you have a, if you're a lawyer or not. So they won't be presuming that.
Right, that's true. And not everybody is a lawyer, so they can't write an exam expecting people to be responding as lawyers. Okay, so any more questions? I'm at the bottom of the list here. I don't see. Oh, Enid's asking, can we be prepared for any questions on Madrid Protocol opposition and or statements of objections, brackets GIs?
So, I mean, I think you should be prepared to answer Madrid questions on oppositions, and basically, they're handled in much the same way. And you should know that the timing for examination, et cetera, is slightly different for Madrid Protocol applications, and that sort of thing. GI, I guess, I mean, anything in the Act is fair game, but it would be not a huge portion of the exam. So if you are not that familiar with it, I wouldn't be too terribly concerned. But do know Madrid as it is covered by the Trademarks Act.
So I have more questions coming in about materials, but again, we'll deal with that later on. So any questions related to materials, I will answer offline because I have to think through all of the different requirements for the materials, but the logistics questions will occur later in the webinar. Any other questions for Megan and Pascal about content or how to answer specific questions? We'll do a last call, final answer.
Close with a funny anecdote. As I just mentioned, correctors shouldn't know if you're a lawyer or not. They don't know who you are. You're to be identified by your candidate number. Now, what I've seen a couple of times is when people are writing like opinions, they sign their name at the bottom of the phony opinion. So try to avoid that because I haven't marked somebody off for that, but still, I mean, it's a potentially conflicting situation.
Good point. Very good point. Luckily, you don't have to actually sign anything because you're typing it, so hopefully you won't be compelled to type your name, but same idea. So Pauline is asking, is the matching question only appearing in part A of the exam? Yes. On this version of the exam, the matching question is only on part A. Anybody else? Any more questions?
Well, if there isn't anything else, I was about to wish you good luck, but it's not about luck. It's about knowledge. So study.
Three more questions came in. Hold on, we're not done yet. every time I try to say we're done, everyone's typing their questions. Is there a possibility to lose points if you put, let's say, 2 sections and only 1 was required?
Oftentimes the markers will be instructed to accept only, say, the first answer or the first 2 answers or the first 3 answers. So don't just put a whole slew and think that if you've hit it once way down in your list that you're going to get the answer correct, because they're not going to go through the whole thing just looking for the possibility that you hit on it somewhere. But if you sorry, what was the question again? I've never.
Oh, so will you lose points if you put more than what was required?
No, you won't lose points for it, but the marker may not look at it if they've only been instructed to accept the first.
Right, answer. That's what I was going to say. Some of the questions themselves will have that in them, so you'll know that they will only mark the first 3 of whatever you write or whatever the question is. Right. So you'll have that in the actual instructions of the question too.
But never have I ever marked somebody, taken away points. Markers don't do that. They don't take away points.
Right, exactly. So Sabrina's asking, I'm not sure if this was addressed. Do we need to know details of the types of goods included in each of the NICE classifications or just generally?
Just generally, it's always good to have, the main ones like 25 for clothing and 3 for cosmetics and 35 for sales. But you don't have to, generally speaking, you don't have to know that. You should know if a question says that the goods are described as clothing, you should know that clothing in and of itself is not going to be acceptable, that it's too broad. But no, we never required anybody to know actual NICE classes.
Okay. How specific should we be when answering questions about drafting grounds for opposition? Can it be point form, or should we assume we are drafting a formal statement of opposition? I'm assuming that's what SOO stands for.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Try to make it as formal as possible. You cite the sections and you cite everything. The trademark is not, sorry, I'm getting to my stuff now.
No problem.
The trademark is not registrable in light of section blah, 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 because the trademark is confusing with this trademark, used in association with these goods, cite the goods prior to, you have to put everything in there because that's how they're marked with, the marking guide has all those indications. That's what we're looking for. We want everything because ultimately, if you're writing, you're sort of drafting a statement of opposition, and in real life, if it's missing information, you could ask for particulars. So that's what the correctors are looking to avoid, an ambiguous statement of opposition that's marking. Well, okay, what goods was it used with? What's the trademark cited against me? So put everything in, and I would say put more than not enough.
Good. That was good advice for sure.
Sorry, on that same point, cite both of the sections involved. I mean, there will always be a section under 38. So, 38 to D with section 2 for a distinctiveness ground of opposition. I think that's correct. Yes. So do cite the 2, the 38 plus whatever other provision is applicable. And sometimes the question itself will say that you can do it in point form, but again, make sure that point form includes all of the elements required.
Yeah. Evan's asking, when will we know the results? We'll talk about that later. Andrew's asked about materials. We'll talk about that later. And Sarah was just, yes, statement of opposition. I got it right. Anybody else? This is the last call for questions. For Megan and Pascal, anyways, not for the whole webinar, just for Megan and Pascal. We'll be sitting at Pascal's dinner table soon. Okay. Well, if there are any other questions that you guys have about content, then you can send them via email to me, and then I will reach out to either Pascal or Megan or our current board to try and get the answers for you. But again, I don't see anything coming in. So I would like to thank Megan and Pascal so much for joining us tonight. I very much appreciate it. I know the candidates really appreciate being able to ask questions in an open forum environment. Daisy has one more question that has just come in. Where can we find samples of statements of opposition? We'll call that the last content question of the night.
That is a very good question. And I don't know where you can find samples, but I know that if you go back to the old exams, you can find samples of what's expected in terms of the exam.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be my only guidance there.
Wait, and maybe if you go to Trademark Opposition Board decisions, sometimes in the introduction they sort of cite all the grounds that were put forth. So that's. But then again, they may not be perfect. The ones in the exams are perfect. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. I will let you go for your evenings. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. The candidates appreciate it. And that's all I can really say. Thank you again so much for your assistance.
Thank you. And like Pascal said, good luck and study hard. Bye-bye.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bye. Okay, so Pascal and Megan are now gone. It's just a little old me. So what we're going to do is we're going to proceed through the rest of the presentation. And this is most likely what all of you are interested in actually watching, because you can see past exams, you know what you're kind of expecting in terms of that, but none of you know what to expect in terms of the exam platform. So let's put your minds at ease as much as we possibly can. And so what I'll do is I'll ask that everybody hold their questions until the end of my presentation, because I might answer your questions while we're going through the presentation. So if you've previously asked a question about logistics, then I will ask you to re-ask it at the end of my little spiel, if I haven't answered it for you already. So, and so Denise is just quickly asking, will the PowerPoint be accessible? This PowerPoint, I can send it, if you want a copy of it, I can send it to you. You can send me an email after the webinar and ask me to send you a copy of that. I don't have any problem sharing that with you. And I'll also share a link to the recording if you'd like that as well. So you'll have to ask for it, but I can definitely provide it to you. Okay, now let's get into what you all have come here to see tonight. Paradigm testing is the online platform. So that's the actual exam browser and that you will see and that you'll be typing your questions into. So Paradigm testing is involved. They're the vendor that builds this, and they work in conjunction with Monitor EDU, and Monitor EDU is the live proctoring vendor support. So you have the online exam where you're writing your questions, and then you have a live proctor who sets themselves up through the system to make sure that there's no unauthorized access of materials, or nobody else is coming in to help you with the exam, that you're not looking things up on browsers that you're not supposed to be looking things up on. So it adds a lot more security and integrity to the exams. So to test your equipment and to see frequently asked questions, I provided this link here. I also sent that out, or I also put that in the candidate guide. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the trademark exam candidate guide on the website, then take a look at that, and it links to this FAQ. So pretty much the first thing that we're going to do is watch a video, and this is also linked in the Monitor EDU candidate guide, but we'll watch this quick video. I think it's 5 or 6 minutes, and it will talk about how to set up your room for the exam. So I'll just play this now. Hopefully the sound works. Hopefully everything works. Oh, I shouldn't have clicked on anything.
When you're picking your exam space, you want to make sure that you're not looking at this.
Oh, I just realized that you guys are telling me there's no sound. I guess I don't know how to fix that. Well, that's unfortunate. I will send the link out to everybody. Thank you for letting me know. Oh, wow, everybody's telling me. I was hoping that I could play that video for you during the presentation, but if that's not working, that's no problem. You can watch this. It's linked in the candidate guide, and I'll also send this link out via email after the webinar too. So pretty much she just goes around and shows you how to set up your room or wherever you're going to be doing your exam. But this is available on YouTube, so you can watch this at any time. And as I said, there's nothing fancy or special about the video. It's just going through how to set up your room. So you can watch that on your own time. Unfortunately, the sound isn't working. I apologize for that. So we're going to go on to what to expect. Now, when you register for the exam, you would have received an email from me this evening that says you're registered for the exam. It gives you a candidate number. It lets you know if your accommodation requests were approved, provides details of that accommodation request, and it lets you know if you've requested the exam to be provided in French. You guys can hear me now, right? Just want to make sure. Just a quick thumbs up. Yes, okay, great, thank you. So you'll get the email, you'll have that information. Now, I don't think that it's been sent out yet, but about a week before the exam, someone from Monitor EDU, her name is Katie, she'll be sending an email out to everybody. And in the email, it will have a link to access the exam forms. So this is what it looks like when you go to that link, sorry. It'll say click on your school or organization to start the test, and then it will list all of the different regulatory bodies that have signed up with Monitor EDU to offer online exams. So you'll find the CPATA option, and it will connect you with a live proctor. That live proctor will go through the registration process with you. They'll check your ID, they'll do the room and system check and provide you with login information and the exam link and login credentials. So until the actual day of the exam, you're not going to have the exam link and you're not going to have your login credentials. The live proctor is going to provide that information to you when you actually connect to the live proctoring system through the link that will be provided to you via email by Monitor EDU, by Katie at Monitor EDU. So 15 to 20 minutes prior to the exam, you will log in or you'll access the CPATA site using the link that will be provided to you. The live proctor will go through the registration process, make sure everything in the room is okay, make sure your materials are okay, make sure you are who you say you are. And then they will go through and give you the exam link and your username and password, because you will need two of those things to actually access the exam the day of the exam. During the exam, you're not going to have access to the following things. You're not going to have access to your phone, headphones or headsets, handheld computers or other electronic devices, pagers, watches, wallets, purses, bags, coats, books, notes, or any other materials not specifically approved by CPATA. And you may not wear hats or other head coverings unless they're worn as a religious observance. So for candidate instructions, you will receive a username and password from the exam provider with the link to the exam, as I just mentioned, the day of the exam, 15 or 20 minutes prior to 1:00 p.m. Eastern time. You'll go to that website from the email that we send you. You'll navigate to the CPATA button. You'll connect with the live proctor. They will give you the link to the exam. They will give you your username and your password, and then you will click login. You will have 3 hours to do the exam. The exam has an auto submission feature, which will occur at 4:00 on the dot. So if you do not experience any technical issues, if you do not have any additional accommodations, then no matter where you are within the exam, at 4:00, it will auto submit. If you are done before 4:00, then at the end of the exam, you will be able to submit your exam, and we'll go through what that looks like. But I'm just letting you know, because there were some questions that came through about, you know, do I have to email my exam back at 4:00, or is it 4:05 okay? The system is actually going to shut you out at 4:00. So you make sure that you plan everything accordingly, you plan your time, allot your time correctly, and ensure that you answer all of the questions. So there's not going to be any pick and choose 2 out of 3, or I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of those types of questions or exams before, but all the questions that are provided are required to be answered. So answer all the questions in the spaces they're provided. For late starts, so you'll have to make sure that if you start late, that is your fault. And so we are not going to be adding any time back for that reason. Technical difficulties and technical glitches are completely different story. So if you're having issues logging in, if your computer system isn't working, if your internet connection isn't working, those types of things are dealt with differently than you just signed in late for the exam. So if you just sign in late for the exam, then you don't get any additional time. If there are technical issues, then that time spent dealing with the technical issues will be added back to the end of your exam time. So for example, if you are late starting because you have login issues or what computer issues, what have you, and you lose 10 minutes of time, then that 10 minutes will automatically be added to the end of the exam period, and you will have until 4:10 to submit your exam. So as I mentioned, allocate your time, write efficiently, and read the questions carefully. Accessing and starting the exam. So you will see the exams on the dashboard, and you're going to click on Start Test to begin the exam. So when you first log in, you'll see, Trademark Agent Exam 2021 Part A. You'll see the duration is 3 hours. The start date and the end date will be the date of November 9th at 1:00 p.m. till 4:00 p.m. Eastern. And the status, obviously, for your first time logging in will be not attempted. In order to begin the exam, then you click on Start the Test. As soon as you click on that, then you'll be presented with candidate and navigational instructions, and you'll be required to read the instructions. So I'll just quickly go through them with you right now. They might change slightly between what you see now and what you see on the exam at the time, but it'll be pretty much the same type of information. So you're going to select or write the best answer for each item, then click Next to move to the next item. Click on the back button to move to the previous question. You can bookmark any number of items by selecting the item and clicking on Bookmark. Vice versa, you can remove the bookmark. You can change your response for any item at any time before submitting the test by making the new response in that area. So you can just type over or delete what you previously wrote and type in your new response. After completion of your test, click Submit Test button to submit the test. Do not close any window directly when you're taking the test. Keep watch on the clock on the top right-hand corner of the exam window for the time remaining, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can submit the test on completing the test. However, if the test time has elapsed, the system will automatically submit the test for you, and that's what I was telling you before. And then at the very bottom is the non-disclosure agreement. So you would agree that you keep the information confidential, et cetera, et cetera. And then you would click Accept and then Start. And then once you do that, then you're actually launched into the exam. So I wanted to go through what some of the response fields actually look like with you. And at the end, I'll give you a link to some exams that the Federation of Law Societies runs that are open to anybody on the internet. And so you can log in and look at their exams and actually practice their exams if you wanted to do that, just to get some practice with the exam platform and the functionality and everything. But obviously that's not the exam that you're going to be taking with us. It's just a good sample for something that you can kind of become familiarized with. So the response fields, there's a couple of things that I want you to pay attention to. When you're looking at a question, the question score will be provided for you. So in this little snippet that I've provided here, the question score is 2. So that means there's 2 marks allocated to that question. So when you're looking at all the questions, you can identify how many marks are allocated to each question by looking at this question score. Another type of question you might be asked is true or false. So you'll get radio buttons and you would just select the true or false answer depending on what you think is correct. Same with yes or no questions. So you might be asked a question of yes or no, blah, 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 and then you would answer the question. The short answers, the short answer questions usually look like this down here. Oops. Which is this little arrow with the word count at 0. So there's a little text box and you can type in your short answer into that text box. Now this box over here on the left-hand side, this rich text field editor, this is for longer answers. So if you have a longer response that you needed to write in, then you have the ability to add some formatting to your response. So you're not going to be marked on formatting because it's difficult to mark an exam like that and be fair in terms of, we're not going to make sure there's like 3 spaces between your salutation and the next line or what have you. That's not what you're going to be marked on. But you can add in bullet points. You can make a list of numbers, italicize things, bold things, create a chart if you wanted to, justification options, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not it's not terribly complex, but it gives you some options with respect to how you're going to answer some of your questions. Now, the navigation and question navigation and review. So down here at the bottom, you'll see a list of questions. And so I just wanted to take a screenshot of that to show you what it looks like when you've done a question and when you still have questions left to do. So you can see 29, 30, 31, 32, those are all marked in blue. And then 33, 34, 35, 36, et cetera, those are all marked in green. So that up to 32 denotes that you've responded to that question. You've actually answered that question already. And then the green ones, the ones on the right-hand side, starting at 33, are showing you that you haven't answered those questions yet. So on the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to see the navigation menu for the questions, and you'll be able to see how many questions you've answered and how many questions you still have left to do. And on the bottom right-hand corner, there's also a question review section where you can see the total number you've attempted, total number that are incomplete, the total number that you've marked as flagged, and that was that bookmarking option that I was talking about in the navigation menu, and then a review all option. So that's a handy way for you to go back to questions that you might have skipped because you didn't have the answer, you wanted to think about it a little bit more, et cetera, or you wanted to revisit your response. Then you can do a quick review of your questions in that section there. At the end of the questions, you'll also see, or at the end of each question, you'll also see some navigation features like looking to the previous question, the next question, and then I didn't put it here, but there's also the bookmarking feature for a question as well. So this is a sample view of what you might see on the exam. This is a multiple choice question, and there aren't any multiple choice questions on the trademark exams, but this is just an example of, the platform and what the platform will look like. So you'll see up here, question number 1. These are the responses. You select your response, and then you can click next, or you can bookmark the question. If you're not sure, you can come back to it. Down here at the bottom, you'll see those were those questions I was showing you, the question navigation. So 1, 2, 3. You'll also see underneath that, there's a bar that lets you know how much of the exam you've completed so far. And then on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that little question review box that I kind of made larger before. This little guy over here can be found in the bottom right-hand corner. And then over here in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the time left. So at the beginning, it'll start off at 3 hours, and then it'll count backward as the time progresses through the exam. So you constantly have a timer up in the upper right-hand corner where you can actually review the time remaining. This little exam aids section is actually a place where you can, the calculators won't be there because you don't need a calculator, but there's this little notepad option that you can click on. And if you click on that, then you can type some notes. So if you're reading a question and you wanted to write some notes to yourself, then you would be able to, click on that little button, and then a little notepad would come up, and then you can type to yourself any notes that you want to take about that question if you wanted to do that before actually typing it into the response field. Here's another example of an essay view or an essay question view. So some of the questions you might see where the stem of the question is on the left-hand side, and then the actual question itself and the response field is on the right-hand side of the screen. So it's all on one screen, but for some of the longer questions where there's a lot more information provided, you might have this kind of split screen situation where the left-hand side is all the question content, and then the right-hand side are the actual questions related to that question stem. Here is another example of the features. So what I wanted to show you here was what that exam aids looks like when you click on it. So if you click on it, then you have this little section here with a note, like a little notepad that you can type in notes to yourself if you wish to do that. Some of the other things I wanted to show you was that if you select some of the text from a question, you can actually highlight or strike through while you're going through the question. So if you're reading a really long question and you think some parts are really important for you to remember, then you can highlight that and then click on highlight and it will mark that as highlighted. And so you can see here, I highlighted some of these areas so that you can see what it looks like. And I've also done a strike through on some of this here area so that you can see what a strike through looks like. So that will help while you're going through the exam questions and the content to kind of remind yourself of important aspects of the question as you're reading it. Okay, so the FAQs, as I said before, new Trademark Act and regulations should be printed and available during the exam. As I mentioned, I will provide more details about what those materials, the requirements for those materials. I don't have that information right now, so unfortunately, any questions related to how those printed materials can be accessible to you, I don't have that right now. I will make those decisions in the next few days, and I will send an email to everybody that has very specific details about what you can print, how you can print it, if you can mark it up, if you can put flags on it, all of those types of things. I don't have that information for you right now. Another FAQ would be technical issues. As I mentioned before, most cases missed time will be added back to the exam time. So for example, if there is a technical issue of no fault of your own, then as I said, the missed time will be added back to your exam time. Bathroom breaks. So you are permitted to use the bathroom, but this time will not be added back to your exam time. So for example, if you have not requested a specific accommodation that requires you to use the bathroom frequently, then what the process would be is you would say to the proctor, because the proctor's watching you take the exam, you'd say, I just have to use the washroom. They would say, okay, you go to the washroom. You would come back. They, depending on how long you were gone for, they might want you to do a room check again. But generally speaking, that wouldn't be required. You would be able to just proceed back into the exam as very quickly. But as I said, that missed time will not be added back. So if you go to the bathroom 3 times and each time you're gone from the exam for 3 minutes, then you've lost 9 minutes of the exam, and that time will not be added back for you. Okay, so the results, the tentative dates for the results. The marking process should begin relatively quickly after the exam is written, because a lot of those true or false, yes and no answers will be programmatically marked. So the system will be set up so that we can put in the correct answer ahead of time and then auto mark those radio button responses. The responses that you're actually going to be writing out will be marked by the exam board. So that isn't something that will be marked by a computer, but hopefully at least having part of the marking process done electronically will save some time. Hopefully we'll be getting the results to you by the end of February. By mid-March will be the deadline to request the exam materials for review. April 2022 would be the deadline to request a review of your exam, and May of 2022 will be the review of the results, the release of the results from the review, sorry. So that being said, I think that kind of covers most of what I wanted to talk about today. Now I'm going to stop sharing just quickly for a moment. 1 second. If I can do this. Stop share. Okay, so what I wanted to do before we get into the question and answers is I wanted to also show you that there was an exam that was provided to us for the purposes of testing. So I'll just quickly show you what that looks like before we get into the question and answer session. And so I'll give you the links to this so that you can kind of, practice with it and do whatever you wanted to do. actually, I think that our exam developer is creating a test exam for you guys specifically. So I'll just use this for a demonstration purpose. But pretty much you'll get to the exam, you'll log in, as I said. These are all of the instructions for a different exam. These aren't the instructions for you guys, so don't worry about that. These are actually part of the Law Society. So you can see a sample question. You can click on this little exam aids. Hello, this is a test. You can click that back. You can see up in the top right-hand corner, the time left, the question navigation, the bookmarking feature, bookmark, unbookmark. So I'm just going to randomly select an answer there and click next. Here you'll see another question up at the top. It has some more multiple choice questions. I'm just going to randomly click an answer and bookmark it and click next. Same with this person. Next. Oh, this is a different type of question. So you can see on the left-hand side, you have the stem of the question. I've highlighted that, so I can click on highlight. Maybe I want to strike through that, so I can strike through that. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, I can see the actual question related to that content. So I'm just going to randomly select one of those. I'm going to bookmark that question, click next. Same with this one. I'm just going to quickly go through those to see all of the different sections that we're going through here. And there we go. So I'm going to go into the question review section. You can see I flagged 3 questions. Those were the ones that I have bookmarked. And so if I go to those ones, you can see along the bottom left, there has that little bookmark icon on there. So that will bring me back to the questions that I had, that I wanted to look at again. And if I click next, it'll bring me to the second question I bookmarked. And if I click next again, it'll bring me to the last question that I bookmarked. And then at the very end of the exam, I'm going to click on submit. And it'll give you a warning. Are you sure you want to submit the exam? You will not be able to return, blah, 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 blah. Yes. So it has submitted the exam, and that's pretty much the end of the show. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I think I did already. So that being said, I will open up the floor. So I see lots of questions that have come in. I'm not going to be able to go through them. So lots and lots of questions are coming in. Now, I'm going to start off by scrolling up and seeing if there's anything that I can answer right off the bat. Okay. Okay, so the bathroom breaks question we already dealt with. Nicholas is asking, does this indicate there are 45 questions on paper A? That's a good question, Nicholas. And so the exam platform breaks it up so that if there, say maybe one question has 4 parts to it, it will label each one of those questions as separate questions. So there might be, maybe 20 questions and each question might have several parts to it, and it will relabel those questions with different numbers. So it might look like there's a lot more questions than there have been in previous exams, but it's not necessarily the case. It's just that they've broken down 1A, 1B, 1C to be 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of how the numbering system works. Will we be able to print parts of the exam on paper for easier reading? No, you are not able to print any parts of the exam during the exam. If you bookmark questions, will they be considered answered sans bookmark at 3 hours or non-answered at 3 hours? If you answer them and you bookmark them, then the answer will be submitted. If you bookmark it and you don't respond to it, then a blank will be submitted at that 3-hour mark. Is each proctor assigned to one candidate, or do proctors share candidates? My understanding is that a proctor will be responsible for watching, I think, between 5 and 7 candidates each, to make sure that they are following all the exam instructions carefully. Can we have a blank sheet of paper and a pen to take handwritten notes during the exam if necessary? No, that's not going to be permitted. That little notebook exam aid section will be available for you to type in your notes. Okay, so that's another exam note question. Are we going to be allowed to have real notepad? No, no real notepads. Can you copy and paste information from the question into your answer, or is that feature disabled? I have asked for that feature to be turned on. So hopefully that will be able to be used. If that changes, then I will let everybody know, but I've asked for copy and paste to be permitted. How are we going to let you know of technical issues? So the live proctor will be there watching the entire time. If you have any issues with technical issues or whatever, then they will be providing you with contacts from Monitor EDU. I believe it'll be a phone number and email address, so that you can get in touch with them if you have any technical issues during the exam. And then they flag with me any escalated issues that they cannot handle themselves. What kind of exam writing environment is acceptable? For example, my office is an open office concept. Would this be an allowable environment for writing the exam, or must I be in my room by myself? That's a good question. And I believe that you should be in a room by yourself. So you should be trying to select an area where there aren't going to be any other people around you. And that kind of is dealt with in the video that we were unfortunately unable to watch, but my recommendation would be that you should be by yourself. Pauline is asking, it will be 150 questions. No, it's 150 marks. So both parts of the exam, each part is 150 marks, but it's not 150 questions. So my understanding from what I've seen is that the matching question is in part A of the exam. I did the testing for part A and part B over the last couple of days, and I did not see a matching question in part B. So don't quote me on that, but from what I can see, the matching from what I've seen on the exam this year is in part A. Does the exam platform work if we have more than one monitor? No, you should only have one monitor. I understand we need two cameras, one filming us from the front and one that shows our desk. Can you explain how we connect with the second camera? So the first camera is connected through your computer, through your desktop or your laptop. And then the second camera is through your phone. I don't know the details of how all of that technology works, but I'm sure that if you contact Monitor EDU, then they will be able to walk you through that process. Same with if your internet crashes, then they will be able to walk you through that process. But definitely when you're selecting an area to write your exam, I would strongly suggest selecting an area or a location that has stable internet connection. So Melissa's asking, where do we find the electronic version of the Act and regulations on the platform? Is that also to be determined? So yes, hopefully in that exam aid section, that's where the links to the Act and the regulations will be. Alternatively, they might be along the top navigation menu. So that hasn't been confirmed to me yet, but I will definitely try to share a print screen of that with you as soon as I have more information. Further to the comment where it was mentioned, we should make a legend to define TMA and TMR at the beginning of the exam. Where can we do that within the structure of this platform? So that would be in that short answer box or the long answer box. If you wanted to use a legend, then you should just put at the top of your response, legend, TMR equals trademark regulations, TMA equals trademark act, and then put the rest of your response in there. That would be the only way I can think of to denote that you're using a legend. I use an external monitor with my computer so that it is a larger size. When I try to run the software, I get a pop-up saying I have to remove the second monitor in order to run the software. Is there a workaround for this so that even if we are limited to a single monitor, we have a choice of limiting that to a single external monitor? Laura, I'm not sure about that. I'm not a technologically savvy person. You might want to contact Monitor EDU and see if they have some solutions for you in that respect. But I believe that you will have to disconnect the second monitor in order for it to work. Another question about dual monitors. So dual monitors are not permitted. Are the computerized documents searchable? That's a great question, and that is not, the functionality does not exist for search functionality. So as of right now, the documents that will be in the platform are not searchable. In addition to printed versions, will electronic copies be available, Martha? That will be in the exam platform. That will not be outside of the exam platform. And the secure browser will lock down your computer so that you don't have access to any other programs. Can we set up an additional monitor to have the ACT on one screen and the exam on the other? Nope, no second monitors are allowed. For the setup of the room, my office space has a flat screen TV on the wall behind my desk. Will I need to cover that with a sheet, or will it be okay logistically? That's a great question, Sarah, and that's something that you can ask Monitor EDU. They have, I believe, a contact us section, and Katie, who will be sending the email with the instructions, can provide further direction to you on that. Now, in the video itself, they might speak to that. If they do speak to that and they do ask you to cover that, then that is something that you should be doing. If they have not spoken to that in the video, then that's something that you can ask them. Can proctors answer any technical or exam logistics questions during the exam? No, they are not going to be able to answer anything related to the exam questions during the exam. They can help you with technical issues in terms of navigating the functionality of the platform, or reconnecting if you accidentally get disconnected, but they are not going to be able to answer any questions like what Megan and Pascal was answering for you earlier. Those types of questions would be directed to likely myself, and we will probably not be able to provide you with much assistance in that area during the exam. Do we have to delete the notes after, or they get submitted as well? The notes will not be submitted, so you don't have to worry about deleting those. Are we allowed to listen to music on speakers without any kind of headset or earphones? Silent. So you're expected to be in a silent space. If you need any accommodations for any other reasons, then those would have had to be requested by October 15th. How do we access and copy and paste from the TMA and TMR? So as I said, I don't have a visual of where that's going to be located on the exam platform, but as soon as I do, then I'll send you a print screen or a screenshot of what that'll look like. And then it'll just be the normal, like you'll highlight the text you want to copy. I'm assuming in that drop-down menu that comes down with highlight and strike through, copy will be available. And then you would just paste it into the answer box, for example, if that's what you were doing, or your notes. If the proctor is watching, more than one person will be hearing the other candidates. Absolutely not. You will not hear anybody except, and you will not even hear the proctor unless the proctor has unmuted themselves to talk to you. Can we put a few post-it flags on our hard copy of the Trademarks Act? That is something I will have to get back to you on. Same with pen or highlighter to mark up the Act or regs. During the exam, you're not going to have a pen or a highlighter to mark up the Act or the regs. Whether you can do that ahead of time is probably not going to be permitted, but I haven't made that decision yet, so we'll have to get back to you on that. Will the exam platform allow multiple window tabs to view various sections of the Act separately? No, that will not be configured. That YouTube video showed a cell phone to watch the candidate. What platform will be used for that, and what if someone calls? There is a special thing that you have to do on your cell phone. I'm not sure if it's an app that you download. I think it's an app that you download, but that kind of deals with making sure that nobody interrupts you during the exam. So definitely take a look at those instructions to make sure that your cell phone is set up appropriately. But I believe that it would prevent people from calling you during that time. And it keeps you connected to the live proctor as well if your computer goes down. Oh, that's the next question. If your computer shuts down and we are disconnected from the proctor and the exam, what are the steps? So that's why you're connected via your cell phone through that app, and as well through the computer. So I believe if there are any issues during the exam, you get disconnected through the computer, then you can contact them through the app that you have on your phone. Do we have microphones on? So you will need to have your microphone on in order to to check yourself in with the live proctor and ask any questions to the live proctor. But otherwise, I believe you will have to have your microphone on just in case, just so that they can hear if there's anything going on in the backgrounds there. Otherwise, they will not have their microphone on. They'll be muted so that you can't hear them. Where in the exam platform will we be able to access online ACT and reg? Okay, so we've answered that already. My office has a clear glass wall. Will that be acceptable, or should I take the exam in a room without any clear walls? That's a good question. I'm going to err on the side of caution and say it would likely be better for you to be in a room without clear walls, but that is definitely something you can confirm with Monitor EDU. Will the front page of the exam lay out the marks for each question so that we can calculate time to be assigned accordingly, or will we have to go through each question to know how many marks each question is worth? That's a good question, Alexandra. And as it's set up right now, the layout is not available at the beginning of the exam. So if you wanted to go through the exam and see what types of questions you're going to be expected to answer, then you'll be able to do that through that navigation bar on the bottom. Can we use the search function in the Trademarks Act search function? So I don't believe the search function is available. Can you use a USB keyboard? Yes, I don't believe that there's any issues with using a USB keyboard, but you'll have to confirm that with Monitor EDU. Is a pet allowed in the exam room, like a studio or bachelor condo unit with no isolated study room or office? I don't believe there's any issues with that. Just let your exam proctor know that they might hear, a dog or a cat in the background, but I don't think that that should be problematic. Just be aware, though, that if they distract you, then that is unfortunately going to impact your exam. So just keep that in mind. Like if your dog, like I have a dog and a cat, and at the most inopportune times, they love to come and yell at me and distract me and try to get my attention. So I would strongly recommend, if possible, to not have any of those distractions around you. However, I know that when you're writing at home, that's not always possible. Okay, let's see here. Do the short and long questions auto save? Don't need to click save as we go. That's correct. Yes. So the entire exam system auto saves every 20 seconds. So there's nothing that you need to do in order to save your responses every time you answer a question. You just go to the next question. And at the end of the exam, you'll have to submit your exam, but there isn't any need to continuously save your responses. Melissa, your question was just, would we have to do that with every question? And I'm not sure what that is that you're referring to. So maybe you can retype that in for me. My closed office has 2 screens. Will I need to somehow unplug one, or does that mean I will only be able to consult the ACT and write my answers on a single screen? So we've already gone over that. Only one monitor, one screen is allowed. Can we use search functions? So there is no search function in the exam platform. That doesn't exist. Can we copy and paste? Yes, you can copy and paste. The copy of the legislation that you'll be providing to us to print, will it be the bilingual Queen's printer version? Yes, I believe so. I'm going to be getting them off of the Government of Canada's websites. So I believe that will be what it will look like, but I will definitely send around what it will be so that you're familiar with that before the exam. I think that I missed the question with respect to legends. Where do we have to write legends? Oh, so if you wanted to write a legend, then you should just type that into the beginning of your response, either in the short answer space or the long answer space, depending on what question it is. So for example, if you're writing a short answer question, you can just say note to marker or something. This is the legend, and TMA equals this, TMR equals this, and then underneath that, right, this is the response to the question, just so that the marker knows that they can clearly delineate between your legend and your response. Will the software that we put on our cell phones block all other apps? I am uncomfortable having my phone in the room as I find notifications distractful. So hopefully, yes. Yes, I totally agree. We would not have you have your phone in your room with you if there will be any notifications going off. So I believe that what you're supposed to have on your phone will prevent that from occurring. Do you know this at this time if the act and reg will be in searchable form? No, it's not going to be searchable. I've already been advised by the exam provider that that the search functionality doesn't exist. Can we use earplugs? No, I do not believe you're allowed to use earplugs unless you have requested that accommodation. Can you please repeat the instructions on where we can include our list of defined terms or abbreviations? Okay, I think I just did that again. As well, you mentioned we should have received an email confirming our candidate number. Should we have already received it, or will it be coming? Thanks. So if you have already registered for the exam and you've received an email from me confirming that you're registered for the exam, then you will have received your candidate number. If your registration isn't completed yet, your class 3 application isn't completed yet, or you haven't received confirmation that your class 3 application has been approved, then you wouldn't have received that yet. So that will probably be coming likely early next week, if not by the end of this week. So we're still working through processing any late applications that were received or any applications where supporting documentation was outstanding. So if you didn't receive a candidate number, then that means that your registration hasn't been finalized yet. What if your cell phone dies? I have an older phone and I am quite confident it will die within 3 hours of video. I don't know if there's a plug nearby where I was going to take the exam. So yes, you're responsible to make sure that your phone is fully charged throughout the exam. So whatever coordination you have to do to make sure that you have access to a charger during the exam, that's what you'll have to do. Can the rules for the exam be adjusted to tell us how many marks total on the exam so that we know with simple math how much time to allot to each question? So as I said, there's 150 marks allocated to part A and 150 marks allocated to part B. As of right now, there is no breakdown that says how many marks are allocated to each question, as it is readily available when you first log into the exam. But as I mentioned, you can quickly navigate through the questions along the bottom of the exam platform to kind of get an indication of where the larger questions are and where some of the smaller questions are. Can we bring snacks and water into the exam? No, I don't believe that that is allowed unless you have a special accommodation for that. Let's see, referring to my previous question where you answered that we need to define TMA and TMR in the little text box, but we would need to define each question. Oh, I see what you're saying. So I would say that if you're going to be using a legend, then you should define it for each question that you're using the legend for. Just because there's no place for you to kind of like write on the exam at the beginning that this is your legend. So if you're going to be using a legend in multiple places, then you can just copy and paste your legend from the previous questions into whatever the subsequent questions are, so you don't have to type it all over again. That's what my recommendation would be, just so that it's as clear as possible to the marking people. I have a hard copy of the Act and regulations from a previous exam provided by CPO. It is the latest copy of the Act, not the old version. Can I use this copy? Likely not. Likely you will be required to use whatever I send you to print out. I have a screen on my laptop plus 2 screens. Does this mean that I have to only use my laptop and no monitors, or can I close my laptop and use a monitor? That's a good question, Danielle, and you'll have to confirm with Monitor EDU whether the system will let you do that or not. I'm not sure if it permits you to select a monitor that's not your laptop. I'm not sure if their system lets you do that, so you'll have to check with them. How do we access the sample Monitor EDU exam so that we can get familiar with the exam platform? So I'll send that link out to you over the next couple of days. I'll send out the ones that I was just showing you right now, as well as one that's being developed specifically for us as a sample exam. So as soon as that's available, I'll send it out, but at least by tomorrow morning, I'll send you the one that I just kind of showed you as a mock exam, and you can practice with that. Do the materials need to be printed single-sided, double-sided, or does it not matter? That's a good question. And I'm going to say that from my purposes, I don't think it's going to matter. You can print it single-sided, double-sided, or what have you. In the interest of being environmentally friendly, I would say double-sided would be okay. But I haven't made any final decisions on that. So I'll make sure to include those details in the communication I send out about materials. Okay, so there won't be a space at the beginning of the exam to show the legend for the whole exam. No, there will not be a space for that. And you'll have to type the legend for each question. As I said, if you want to use a legend, then that's what you'll have to do. You can copy and paste what you wrote in previous questions into the subsequent responses so that you don't have to keep retyping it. What is the app required for Monitor EDU on the phone? Alessia, you'll have to check the candidate guide and instructions for that because all of that information is in there. I'm not sure what the app is called. Do we need to put the legend? Okay, so we've already answered that. Any kind. Yeah, so as I said, this is the reality of dealing with an online exam platform. If you want to not type out trademark regulation or trademark act every time you respond to something and you want to use a legend, then to be safe, I would recommend that you put the legend at the beginning of every response. If you don't do that, then I cannot guarantee that the markers will understand what it is you're referring to. But as I said, you can copy and paste from your previous legends into the new responses so that you don't have to type it out every time. I've downloaded the secure browser as indicated in the CPATA guide. Do I need to launch this when starting the exam? Will it automatically launch when we follow the link sent by the proctor? I believe that it will automatically launch when you follow the link that's sent by the proctor. Okay, so another question, when do we expect to receive the formal notice of our registration as an agent in training? So most of everybody registered for the trademark exam has received that confirmation. We have not sent the formal approval letters for a lot of applications yet because you are pretty much looking at the registration team. So not only have I been trying to develop the online exam, but I've been trying to process everybody's class 3 applications as well. So we will be getting those formal letters out to you guys as soon as we can. I would have sent an email to you though, just informally letting you know that your class 3 application has been approved if it had. And then we'll send the formal approval letters as soon as we have time to do that. But the priority is making sure that we have actual registration decisions for everybody who has applied. So Stacy's asking about water. I'm going to have to double check to see. I'm pretty sure that something like water would be permitted, probably not snacks unless there's an accommodation request, but I don't know why water wouldn't be permitted. I'll have to double check that though, Stacy, and get back to everybody about that. Can we have our own timer or clock? You will have access to only what is in your room. So if you have like an analog clock that you have visible access to, or a digital clock that tells you the time, then I believe that you will be able to see that there wouldn't be anything that we could prevent you from looking at in terms of a clock, but you wouldn't be able to have your own timer, for example. The timer is inside the exam platform itself. Will the app that we need to put on our phone require access to our entire device? Some apps demand that you give them access to all of your photos, contacts. I do not believe that that would be required for this app. So you will have to double check with Monitor EDU to see what the app is and what type of information they ask for permission to access when you download that app. So you'll have to confirm with them what type of information the app accesses when you download it onto your phone, but I don't believe that they would ask for any of those types of things when you download that. It's mostly to ensure that your exam space is secure and that you don't receive any notifications or communications external to the exam during the exam itself. Yeah, so I've already talked about the water thing, so I'll just confirm that there's no issues with that. I don't see why there would be an issue with the water thing. The snacks, again, I'll have to confirm that, but I believe that you would have had to ask for an accommodation to have at least a snack with you. I think water should be permitted, but again, I'll double check that with the provider and get back to you. Yeah, so again, as I said, I don't think that eating during the exam will be permitted, but unless there's an accommodation request, but I'm fairly certain that water is allowable, but I will double check that. Can we bind the pages of the act that will be printing? Are you talking about like in one of those spiral binder type of situations, like I can't remember what they're called other than spiral binding. But if that's what you mean, then I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Does the note section refresh for each question, or does it say stable from question to question? That's a really good question. And I believe that it stays stable from question to question. So I don't believe it changes as you go through the exam, but that's something that you can practice with when you're doing the practice exam. The deadline for accommodations was October 15th. So if you now feel like you need to request accommodations, then you will be required to provide documentation from a medical professional to support that request. So you can review all of the information regarding accommodations on our website, but that usually requires some supporting documentation from a healthcare provider. How do we check things with Monitor EDU, and when do we have a contact? Yes, so in the email that will be sent to you by Monitor EDU, her name is Katie, she'll provide you with her contact information, and you can start checking those things out by looking at the candidate or the candidate guide. So the candidate guide that's posted on the website has some instructions in there for you to start checking out your system, making sure your system meets the system requirements, checking that your phone has the app and that works and everything like that. So all of that's in the candidate guide. You can start doing that at any time. Nicholas, I'm not sure what that means. And Sabrina, I'm assuming your yes was response to the spiral binding. Okay, can we do the room check earlier because it might take longer time to change the setup to meet the requirements? Yeah, so that's why that video is there. So you can watch the video and set up your room way ahead of time before you even connect with the live proctors. And then that will make sure that you won't have to do many changes, if any, when you actually sign in with the live proctor. So watching that, how to set up your room will help you figure out how to make sure everything is acceptable ahead of time. How secure is the video link in terms of encryption? Will the examiner know our name when they watch us? Well, they're going to have to know your name because they're going to be checking your ID to make sure that you are the person that is supposed to be writing the exam and you didn't ask somebody else to write the exam for you. Everybody that works for them is under their own confidentiality agreement, and they are required to abide by all of the privacy laws regarding personal information. I don't believe that they collect any personal information from you other than like there's no collection of information, meaning they're writing things down. But they check to make sure that the name they got on the registration matches the name that you're showing them in your ID. Other than that, there isn't anything else that they would ask you for in terms of private information. Are we being video recorded, and will that be destroyed? And when or are they keeping the video of us, and for how long? That's a really good question. I believe that the information or the recording is kept for a specific period of time in case there are any appeals or anything that comes out of the exam, like the candidate says this happened and the live proctor says this happened. So they go back and review the video to see what really happened. So I believe that they do keep that video for a specified period of time, and then they securely destroy that after that period of time has passed. But I'm not 100% sure what that is. So I will definitely check into that and let you know more about that if I can find that information from them. And I'll try and circulate that via email. Oh, and Nicholas was just saying that, sir, I'm not sure if I'm even saying that right. Surlocks is the type of binding. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Not very familiar with that type of stuff. Okay, so I think I've finally gotten to the end of the questions. So lots of things happening here. From what I'm getting, water obviously is a big one. So again, I don't think there's going to be any issues with water. Snacks, that is more on the fence. I don't know about that, again, with accommodations. So I'll definitely confirm that you'll be able to have access to water during the exam. Again, I don't think that that's a problem. It's more the snacks. That might be problematic, but I'll confirm that for sure. I'll also get back to everybody about the format in which you can have the printed materials. So I'll provide you with what the exact materials are, instructions on how they can be printed or how they should be displayed or presented with you, whether you can mark them up, whether you can have tabs or anything like these little things. I don't remember what they're called, but like these little things in there. We'll make all those decisions and then we'll let you guys know about that. Okay, so more questions are coming through. You mentioned that Monitor EDU proctors must follow all privacy laws. It appears that they are an American company, so is there a clause that they follow Canadian privacy laws? I'm not 100% sure how that all works, but you'll definitely be able to contact Monitor EDU and ask him about their privacy laws. When I did ask them about this, they indicated that yes, they has to be compliant with American privacy laws. But at this point, you'll see several of the other regulators across Canada are using their systems, including the Federation of Law Societies, for their exam processes. So it is something that is well known and relatively well used across Canada over the last couple of years. And there have been no indications of privacy concerns from any of the other clients that they have used or are offered exams for. And those are Canadian clients. Is a hairband considered a head covering? Just mean like a hairband to hold your hair back out of place? I don't think that that would be considered a head covering. I think they're more talking about like hats. In real life exams, snacks were permitted as in a piece of chocolate or a fruit over 3 hours. Okay, I'll double check and see about the snacks. From my experience in previous exams, snacks were not permitted. But then again, we're in a new world and a new situation, so I'll confirm the snacks as well. But I won't give you a final answer on that tonight. Okay, so somebody's asking about printing the exam. No, you can't print any parts of the exam. What about coffee and other drinks? I don't see there being an issue with that. I think that more or less there would, like, if it's like a clear water bottle or a water bottle or something that's relatively easy to make sure that there's nothing written on it, then I don't think that there would be a problem with that. But for example, I'm just thinking of like a paper cup, for example. You might have something written on it. So I'm just going to go back and see, what is been relatively accepted in the past with respect to food and drink. And I'll circulate a more detailed notice about that in an upcoming email communication. So I'll definitely get back to everybody about that. So obviously these are the the heavy hitters in terms of questions is food, water, and printed materials. So that is what I will be, those are my 3 pieces of homework that I will get back to everybody about in terms of the logistics and everything like that. So stay tuned for that information. Okay, so it seems several candidates inquired about having a summary of the exam at the beginning so that people can understand how to allocate their time. Because we're in a generation that has worked largely with paper exams and have always had the ability to flip through an exam to get the big picture, is there any way that the summary of your exam can be inserted into the beginning of the exam? This seems like it would be decrease the stress of a lot of people. That is something that I can look into. So the exam is under development. It's almost completed. So I'll see how much it would take to insert kind of like a table, I guess you could call it, that has, the questions, question numbers and the number of marks allocated to each question so that you can see that right at the beginning. But just keep in mind that when you click on start after the exam starts, you can't get back to that dashboard. So you might be able to see it very briefly at the beginning of the exam in the exam instructions. But once you click start to actually start the exam, then that information is gone and you won't be able to get back to that dashboard until the exam is completed. So it might be better that you actually just navigate through the bottom section, where as I said, if you navigate through each of those questions, if you click on each one of those little boxes at the bottom, you can see what all the questions are. You might want to do that at the beginning when you log into the exam so that you can kind of see it and spend more time looking at it, because the longer you spend at the beginning just on that instruction page, the less time you have in the actual exam section. So I just want you to kind of balance those things in your mind of having that quick access for a few seconds at the beginning of the exam, and then just continuing to see that just using the navigation feature along the bottom of the platform to see all of the different questions and click on them, and then you can see how many marks are allocated that way. Okay, so I'm getting some thank yous. So thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm getting the point about snacks. Exam was written by the same people as last year or completely new board? That's a good question, Paulina. I believe that there are some returning exam board members from last year, but there are also some new board members. So there's a little bit of mix of both returning and new. Okay, so the legend box, unfortunately, we're not going to have any, we're not going to be able to build that into the exam platform. So we're going to have to let go of the legend box and just kind of go with either typing out your responses or, copying and pasting your little legend information at the beginning of each one of your responses if you wish to do that. But we are not able to develop the legend aspect into the exam platform at this stage. So unfortunately, again, with the search functionality, that's something that's not built into the exam platform, and that's not something that can be developed before the exam can be administered. So the search functionality is not something that we'll be able to deliver on in the exam platform. So we've already had the question about saving. The exam auto saves every 20 seconds. So you do not have to save your answers every time you respond to something. On a similar note, can we not take mental notes on a piece of blank paper rather than scrolling through online trying to find our notes in the exam questions? So you're not going to be scrolling in the little exam aid section. That's where you can type in your notes there. So I don't think that it would be problematic for you to use that little exam aid notepad to type in your notes there. Just to confirm, if we scroll through each question at the start without inserting an answer, it will remain blue. I believe, Janice, I believe that is how it works. So if you scroll through and you don't actually answer it, I don't think it turns blue, but that's something that you can test while you're looking at that practice exam. Okay, so there's a lot of privacy questions, and we do have privacy policy, we do have privacy training, we do have all of those privacy things. I just don't have that information available at my fingertips right now. So I can say that the exam platform, Monitor EDU, and Paradigm, they do meet all of the college's privacy requirements. Even though I don't have access to all of their privacy policies at the tips of my fingers, they do meet our privacy requirements. And so, as I mentioned, if you have any questions specifically about their privacy policies and requirements, then you are definitely allowed to contact them for that. I will try to locate some information about that, and I will try to post that as much information as I possibly can. Yeah, so Julie actually has a really good point. She's saying if CPATA authorizes TMA and TMR as acceptable abbreviations, then we can all just use them and skip the legend issues. And that's actually a really good point, Julia. I think that that is something that I might recommend to the exam board. So thank you for recommending that. You know, it could be that I just say to the exam board, the candidates might say TMA, and they might say TMR, and it is understood that TMA means Trademark Agent or Trademark Act, and TMR means Trademark Regulations. And so I will confirm that with them and send that to you via email just to confirm that that's the case. But that solves the problem, and then you don't have to write your legend on every single response, assuming you're only using your legend for TMA and TMR. If you're using it for other things, then I think it'll be too complicated to kind of authorize a blanket usage of those abbreviations or additional abbreviations. But that's a really great recommendation, Julia. Does the exam aid notepad stay as you click through the questions? If you use your notes on Q1, it will still be visible on Q2. Yes, I believe that's how it works. Okay. Further regarding tabbing the legislation, at least for all candidates who went through law school and the bar exam, professors and the bar examiners allowed tabbing as an exam is testing our substance and knowledge, not our speed with which we can flip through the act or reg. That's a good point. And as I said, I'll definitely be returning to that. I don't foresee there being an issue with tabbing. But again, I don't want to say yes 100% and then go back on that. So I'll definitely confirm what format the materials can be accessed. Oh, Genevieve has a really good question about the abbreviations and what that would be in French. So in French, she's saying, would that be LMC and RMC? I would have to confirm that. I don't speak French, unfortunately, I'm sorry. But for the French speaking individuals and French speaking writers for the exam, I would have to confirm that those abbreviations would be the same. Like, so TMA is LMC and TMR is RMC. Is that correct? I would have to confirm that. Okay. Yes, okay, so Laura's asking to add TEM for the trademark examination manual. So I'm gonna just write these down. TEM, TMA, TMR for the legend. And then I'll also ask what the French equivalents are. So then I will send that via email to everybody so you have a more solid answer for that. Okay, same with highlighting. Sorry, Andrew, I'm not sure what your question is. All I see that you said was same with highlighting. Okay. Okay, so basically from the French responses I'm getting, it does sound like LMC and RMC would be the abbreviations for French. PN for practice notes. Okay, I'll add that one too. PN for practice notes. So TEM, TMA, TMR, and PN. You mentioned that the exam questions won't be searchable, but will the provided TMA and TMR be searchable? No, unfortunately, I don't think that that's available. I don't think the search functionality is available within their platform. So Andrew was saying highlighting in the same vein as to the tabbing. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Exactly. So same type of idea. I'll confirm that highlighting is also permitted in terms of the reference materials ahead of time. So tabbing, highlighting, those types of things. I'll make sure that that is acceptable for the reference materials. I'll get back to you about the legend. I'll get back to you about snacks and water. We'll look into the privacy policies. What else am I missing here? And it is 6:55, so I do want to say we are kind of rounding out the webinar time. We're going to be closing in about 4 minutes, so I'll ask for your final questions. But I'm pretty sure I have a good understanding of the main issues that we need to have kind of resolved before the exam is written. Just make sure anything else. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so it is 6:56. As I said, I'll stick around. I'll stick around just in case there's any more questions in the next few minutes. Oh, so Mika's asking for TMOB to be added for the trademark opposition board. Okay, we'll add that to the legend. And so again, I'll just be asking the exam board markers to allow for those abbreviations within the exam without you having to write your legends. So Janice is asking, where can we find the links to any software we need to download? So that is in the candidate guide. So there's a candidate guide that was posted on our website, and there is some instructions on there on how to test your platform and how to check out your phone and make sure everything's set up on your phone and everything like that. So that is all available in the candidate guide. Oh, I feel like I need some water. Speaking of water, see, I've just spoken for 2 hours without a drink. Okay. Okay, another question, writing about sections. Okay, writing on the sections. I will check all of that for you guys. So this was our inaugural candidate orientation. So I really appreciate all of your attendance, all of your engagement, all of your questions. I think that this was a really good way for us to try and provide you with as much information as possible in a situation that you're unfamiliar with and I'm unfamiliar with. So I do appreciate your patience, and I appreciate everybody's participation. So I hope that this was informative for you and that it provided you with a little bit more comfort knowing what you will be expecting to see on the actual exam platform itself. And I will get back to you with some of those items that we have been kind of discussing tonight. So it's 6:58. I will again stay for 2 more minutes in case there's any other questions that are coming through. But yes, I very much appreciate you attending. I look forward to getting to know all of you as you become agents and you go through the qualification process. Yeah, and I appreciate your patience too with all of the different changes and policies and procedures and everything changing. You know, it's new for everybody, so I definitely appreciate that, the learning curve. Okay, well, it is 6:59. I will let everybody go. Thank you all very much for joining me tonight, and I will I will send the recording link out if you ask for it. So if you'd like a link to the recording, then let me know and I can send it to you. Same with the link to or attached to the PDF files of the presentation. And I'll also get back to you about those topics that we were discussing. Okay, that's it for tonight, everybody. I'm going to end the session. And I hope all of you have a lovely evening. If you're in Toronto, stay dry. It is wet and yucky outside. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great night.